2, 1.
Hello, and welcome to the meeting of the Long Meadow Select Board. It's August 21st, Monday. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, we've had some beautiful days. Hopefully people got to see the eclipse.
Stared right at it.
Stared right- Okay,
I took the lead of our president. Take your glasses off and stare.
yeah.
I gotta have my eyes replaced anyways.
Did you see?
Well, it was kind of fun. I actually went to
There was an
Springfield.
eclipse today. I didn't see much about that on the news or on Facebook.
No, I didn't see hardly anything.
There was a big gathering in Springfield at the museum. It was kind of fun, so. I think the gathering was a lot more exciting than the actual eclipse, if you ask me. But okay, we can start with announcements. Do we have any?
We do, yeah. I just want to remind folks that there is a Finance Committee opening that's currently posted. Applications are due shortly after Labor Day, so if people want to serve on the Finance Committee, they should submit an application to our office. You can get information about it from Debbie House. The appointment is made by the Finance Director, the Chair of the Finance Committee, and the Moderator, so it is not a Select Board appointment, but the position is open. We have a Finance Committee member here, so if you want to spend more time with our good friend Richard, sign up for the position. Actually, the Finance Committee, if you saw at town meeting, has been much more integrated into the budget process, so if people really want to learn in depth about town finances and how our budget is put together, it's a pretty interesting spot. The other one I have is the three-town trolley, which is the new, what we're now calling the new senior ride program that we're doing on a pilot basis through with East Long Meadow and Hamden through an agreement with Pioneer Valley Transit Authority. Is going to start on September 11th, and we'll probably try and do some kind of announcement or event as we get closer to that, but that's the start date. So the seniors who we have as current riders of the service have already received a letter notifying them of the change in the service, and we'll do some further outreach and see if we can build that service even more. And Mark, you want to make an announcement?
Yeah,
Tom, if I could,
right.
I just want to follow up for people about the PVTA bus services into Springfield because of financial considerations. The PVTA, who is proposing to eliminate all bus service in Long Meadow, is able to not eliminate all service, but it has been cut back. There are actually now 2 buses in the morning, 2 buses in the evening that go down Route 5 all the way to Enfield in the morning, and from Enfield they come back in the evening. The new routes are posted in the library and at the Adult Center, also available at Bay Path University, or people, if they want to, can go online at pvta.com. It's Route G5, but just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that there was a reduction in bus service.
You said Z5?
G.
Oh,
G is
G,
in bold.
okay. I was thought maybe they put us Z because we're so close to the end of the border. Any other announcements?
Yeah, a little premature. Just remind everybody, school's starting back on the 31st, so it'll be already in session by the time we go back. Start watching the roads, and kids like to dart around quite a bit.
Yep, that's good. Any other announcements? Well, when I was looking at the reports, I noticed that the police chief had said that he would like people to register their security cameras with the police department, and that's just a good way for us to coordinate if there is something that's going on, criminal in the activity, if they knew you had a camera. I guess there's about 18 individuals who've already volunteered to join in with that process. So if you have a security camera, you could think about it. It would be helpful for the police to have that data. I'm sure if something happened in your neighborhood, you'd probably offer it up anyway. So, all right, if there's no other announcements, I guess we can go right to resident comments. No? No resident comments? Okay. Then select board comments. Is there any to get started? All right. Well, good. We're flying through this. And we can go right to the town manager reports.
Thanks, Tom. I actually am going to hold off on part of my town manager's report coincidentally lines up with an agenda item that we'll be talking about in a little bit, and that about the maintenance of public grounds. So I had done a report on some discussions we've had with the schools that tie directly to that, so I'll hold off on talking about that until we get to that agenda item. Just as another aside, we've talked about the capital planning process many times here, and I think I have expressed in the past that, you know, every year we've made changes to try and improve it, but we still think that there are, you know, there just seems to be some disconnects in the process that seem to be structural, and so we kind of initiated a conversation with the chair of the capital planning committee to say, what are some thoughts that we could, what are, you know, basically ideas shared to find ways that we could address those somewhat structural, I don't want to say deficiencies, but, you know, things like, you know, the DPW spends countless hours preparing 30-odd, you know, applications with some level of detail when realistically there's only enough money to fund, say, 12 of them. And sometimes the data in the 12 applications doesn't get the attention it needs because they're spread thinner with all the other ones. And so how do we make it so they're spending the most time getting the best information for a smaller number of applications so we get better, more detailed, more comprehensive capital plan applications? That was one thing. And then the other thing, and this happens every year, it can sometimes be almost 1 year or close to a year between the time they get the pricing or quote or estimate on a particular project till the time we actually go out to bid it. And we've had many situations where the estimate, which was a good estimate at the time we were given it, just doesn't line up with the pricing because of market shifting or materials, you know, shortages or something like that. How do we compress that time so the data is not so stale when we finally, if we get it funded by town meeting, we go out to bid? We had a positive dialogue. The chair was going to bring back some of the ideas to his committee, and we were going to talk about that more in September. And as you know, I was on vacation, so I just been back last week, and that's just about all I have for now.
Okay. Any questions for Stephen on that? I have a couple of things that kind of jumped at me. I saw that the Council of Aging Outreach Coordinator completed the SHINE training program, and that's a pretty nice thing to have, because for those of you who aren't familiar with the SHINE program, they meet with seniors in the community and they help explain how their insurance is going to change over time with Medicare and Medicaid, and make sure that they have the right kind of gap insurance, and they're not paying for too much insurance, but they're not, you know, underestimating the costs. So that's a nice program that we have him trained for that. And then I saw that on September 18th, we're going to have the dementia-friendly presentation by James Lighting, is that? Or you probably didn't see that, but that'll be coming up in September. You know, as we know, dementia is one of those problems that, you know, really creates a burden for caregivers as well as the individual who is not themselves, let's put it that way. So we'll be hearing more about that, which is kind of exciting. And then it talked about the Dwight Road drainage, and it said August 4th it was completed. And that's, I wasn't quite sure what that was
That's the water
about.
line.
That's
That's the water line
Yeah.
from Dwight Road to our.
Oh, they
DPW.
said that was completed, yeah, but there's another one that talks.
No,
That was the
this
same
was, this is an old drainage project, and I think the
Okay.
update there is that we never really finished the drainage project, because we finished the drainage work, and then we put the road back together, but what you see out there today was really just binder coat, because shortly after we started putting the road back together, Michael Crowley's interest in this parcel started to emerge, and we knew we were going to potentially need to be tying in water lines and other work. And so we held off on doing final paving and initiating a 5-year moratorium on a new road, so we could assess the time it took to get the project and the diff all put together that we did back in May ended up being a couple of years, but we didn't, in hindsight, it was really the right decision, because now we didn't spend money finalizing a roadway that we're now going to be tearing up completely to rebuild. So that was really why that's in there.
Yeah.
To go back to your Council on Aging, and I appreciate you bringing that up, the
Okay.
dementia-friendly program is really a building block of the age-friendly community program, which is something that the board had talked about. We had said we were going to try and become an age-friendly community. That's a AARP kind of sponsored national program, and talking to Jim about it, he had done some work on that in previous jobs, but he felt like the dementia-friendly one was something that was more focused and timely and in some ways needed in this community. And so we're going to do the dementia-friendly program and build on that, and then as a stepping stone to get to the overall age-friendly community. And age-friendly, of course, includes the Complete Streets and the driver program and some of the other things we're doing. And actually, it reminds me, I did forget a couple of things. I didn't write them down, but I did forward a couple of emails this afternoon, speaking of that. If you're done with your questions, I can.
Okay.
You wanna go
Well,
through
no, I
your stuff
did. I
first?
was also, because I noticed the construction has started at Dwight Road, and it's always sort of a bittersweet thing to see all those trees that were cut down. But then the other side of it is that, with that building going up, it'll provide medical care for people closer to home, and we will get tax revenue. So, this is progress.
Yeah.
This is the way it works. And I also wanted to mention about it said in there that the buildings for Grand Meadows were raised. Is that? No. Okay.
We are looking at, though. We're evaluating that.
Okay.
The project was carried, the demolition of the Grand Meadows Club has been carried in the estimate for the general contract, and so it'd be part of when we bid out the construction of the new building, it'll be part of it. We've talked internally about splitting it out and getting that done sooner rather than later, and that's something that our engineering firm is looking at.
Okay. And then I think the last question is, it talked about the schools and all the work that's, been done. And, I thought at one point you had mentioned about doing a deep cleaning of the two middle schools, because we've had some complaints about the dust and all that sort of thing. And was that able to take place?
That happened during the school year, during one of the breaks.
Oh, it happened during one of the
Yeah, I
breaks?
don't know if it was February or April, but I remember that happened during the school year.
Okay, great. I believe that's all I had. Well, the other thing was, the town clerk talked about voter check-in and having people scan their driver's license. And I don't know if other folks caught that, but that was, I was a little surprised by that. I mean, she's anxious to use that technology, but I don't know if that's something that, that's kind of a big issue, if we have voters check in. I know, when I read it, I thought, well, if people showed up and they didn't know what precinct they were in, and they scanned their license and it told them exactly where they belonged, that's one thing. But, I think about voters who may be walking their dog and walk in to vote, they probably don't have their license with them. And I don't want to discourage voters and.
Yeah, I think it's more of it's a way to streamline the
Yeah.
process. It doesn't mean anyone can vote.
Okay,
There's no requirement for a driver's license, but right now, if you walk in, license or not, and you're not sure what precinct you're in,
yeah,
you have to go check with one table and say, what's your address, and they look you up, and sometimes, especially if you have people who don't vote every election, and it's a
Yeah.
big issue that they care about, it can lead to long lines and long delays, and our election workers are very dedicated, but if you've met them, they are an older crowd, and it's a stressful night for our election workers. And this is just something where if you have your driver's license and you're willing to use it, you go and you scan it and it tells you right where you're supposed to go, and you don't have to, it really is a way to create an efficiency, not a barrier.
oh, good. Paul, I noticed you walked up.
Yeah,
Is
no,
that-
again, it's exactly that. I mean, there's going to be optional ways, either with your license or the old-fashioned way of giving your precinct, your name, your street. But what is going to happen also, it potentially may reduce the number of intake workers, but then the system will be able to download who attended, because they do this anyway after the fact. They download into the state system whether people attended that meeting or not. They'll be able to do that electronically afterwards. So it will save some time post-meeting time also.
Okay, great. And I noticed they said that the number of voters, 1,100 less voters turned in the information for the census. They said that was kind of a large number. And, 2,200 removed from the voter list. So I guess those census forms that people get in the mail, it's really important that you remind
Right.
people that you are a voter and that you will be, it'd be tough if you get to the voting, community center and they say, well, you're not registered. That would be.
Well, they are getting letters to rectify that.
Oh.
If they don't respond to the letters, then they're going to be taken off the voter list. They'll have to jump through hoops at the next meeting if they're still residents and want to vote.
Okay, great. You guys are on top of it, as usual. Thanks, that were all my questions. Did you have something else?
I was going to jump back into a couple of things, just I wasn't here when the assistant town manager job description was put in the packet. We plan on posting it this week, so if anyone had any concerns about it, just let me know. The other thing was that water line, I think it was in the report, that water line was installed from Converse Street to the new facility, which is a big deal for us because the existing water line was a Springfield line. With the progress we've seen on Dwight Road, it reminds me that town council and the attorney for the developer are going to be getting together shortly to review a draft of a developer agreement. A draft was put forward by the developer's attorney. Town council did review and comment on it, and they just need to kind of connect and talk about it. So that will be coming back before the board, hopefully in the near future. And I did send out some information today. I mean, as people are well aware, we had a tragic pedestrian accident on Saturday on William Street. And, I think sometimes when something like that happens, and to be honest with you, until the district attorney's office releases its report, I don't know that we'll be sure what happened there. There's been, our police were there, they conducted some interviews and did their report, but they turned the case over to the DA. So, as I emailed the board today, last week before any of that happened, we had our regularly scheduled traffic committee meeting, and we're kind of running through the long list of ongoing initiatives we have to help improve the flow of traffic, but also the safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, and be forward-looking with our programs. We are developing with VHB a pretty substantial complete streets plan, ranking all of our ramps and sidewalks, and actually the inventory is 99% done. So we've inventoried every ramp and crosswalk and all of those things over the past year or so. But I wanted to share with the board some of the work we've been doing in that regard, so if we reported on it later, it wouldn't seem reactive. Like I said, I don't know what happened or what could have been prevented or not, but that crossing, in fact, because it is a very busy crossing during the school year, is one that we had identified as a top priority. And so as we move forward with our Complete Streets application, that was one that we had already talked about including.
Okay.
So, like I said, it's not comfort for the family and the witnesses and the people involved, but I just wanted the board to know we had that on our radar screen, and we have been moving forward to try and find a way to address that. And then changing gears, I did want to just direct the attention to the building inspector's report, because every week at our staff meeting, he talks about fines that he has collected based on bylaws or policy changes that the board has implemented over in the recent past. The ones about being able to attach fines to the property tax bills where we didn't have the authority before. This is something that's been important for the board to kind of help maintain the appearance of the community. And I've asked him for a summary. He's much better at collecting it than he is giving me the information. But I don't know, Paul. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars, probably this in.
I think he said $18,000.
On one house.
One house. Already.
One house was $18,000. Another house was like $5,600. I mean, over the last since probably last July 1st, when I think some of these things went into effect, or when the bylaws went into effect, I mean, he's collected tens of thousands of dollars in fines from people, not assessed, collected. You know, because what's happened a lot of times, especially the ones that were, especially when we changed from foreclosed to just vacant. That was a big change, because then we were able to apply that policy, and some of them the people have had to pay us at closing because it was a lien on the property. And so it's been a very, very effective tool to dealing with blight in the community with some of the houses. So I want to take a moment to talk about, we worked together, the board had a vision for what it wanted, we worked together, we got it done, town meeting endorsed it, and now we are doing our part to enforce it and making sure we hold people accountable, so.
Stephen, I just want to ask a question about that. You know, are the fines being collected and, you know, and put into the general fund, but that doesn't really help the property and the neighbors' you know, the property being clean? Or are we spending town money to clean up the properties, and this is essentially reimbursing us? I understand one's left pocket, right pocket, but you know, I think the intent of or at least one of the intents of the bylaws was to try to keep the properties clean and not just collect money. So I was wondering if there was having an impact of actually getting the properties cleaner.
Well, the first priority is going in the general fund, right? I mean, we can certainly set up a special revenue account at a town meeting, right?
We could, or we could add it to the budget in FY 19 or 18.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, the priority is always to get the property cleaned.
Right.
If it's grass or leaves or bushes being trimmed or whatever, or trash in front of Paul Healy's priority is always to get it cleaned up. And that's why he goes and leaves a note, and he doesn't fine first, ask questions later. He usually tries to get a sense of what's it gonna take to get the property cleaned up. When he gets a lack of cooperation, that's when the fines start totaling. And we've been fortunate that in a lot of cases, he was able to get the property cleaned up and get the fines collected at closing or at transfer. So that has worked well, but I think now that we know that this has been we're learning as we go on this, and what the effectiveness of this and what our collection rate is, I think now we would have more confidence in, you know, getting the permissions we would need to access a property to clean it up, but we'd have to hire a contractor to do that, but we want to avoid that, and I think Paul's been effective at kind of balancing those things out. When we hit one that is, just doesn't seem to be moving, we certainly would do that, knowing that we could potentially collect the revenue downstream.
So you brought up the building department report. There was something in there that struck me. I mean, there's an individual, it sounds like he's got a double lot, or he put combined lots, and he's going to build a new home, and he wanted to stay in his home until the other one was built. And, you know, I know there's a bylaw that says you can only have one primary residence, and that's a concern, but isn't there a way we could say, you know, until the other building starts to be destroyed, that, you know, he can't get a certificate of residency so he could actually make that transfer, or?
Yeah, my understanding is that we did talk about this during one of our bylaw review meetings with the ZBA, Planning Board, Building Commissioner, and they were pending before the ZBA for their special permit.
Permit, yeah.
And the ZBA was going to attach conditions to the special permit that was going to allow them to do that.
Okay.
And basically grant them a temporary certificate of occupancy, or withhold the certificate of occupancy until the other house was demoed. I mean, it was what the people were trying to do, we thought seemed on the up and up, and so we wanted to give them the ability to do that without running the risk of them deciding, you know what, I like that other house here too, I'm gonna rent it out. So, running into that situation. So, the ZBA chair came up with an idea to attach to their conditions, and that's how we handled it.
That's good, because I know when people have had fires in town, they've had to live in they put a trailer, a temporary house, and so it's always helpful. I mean, I know if I had room to build a second home on my property, I'd like to stay in my home until the other one's completed, so.
I think I talked to you, they had no intention of renting it out.
Yeah, so.
Well, I mean, and when I talked to them, I said, it's got nothing to do with them.
Oh,
And what they
no,
wanna
I
do is-
know,
You
yeah.
have to treat everybody consistently, and that,
Right.
unfortunately, in situations like that, you treat everybody like what the worst person in the world would do in that situation. So you have
Sure.
to at least set the bar low, and then so they understand where we're coming from when we just can't say yes to things like that automatically.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I felt like we came up with a reasonable solution.
Yeah, no, that's great, because they need a certificate of occupancy, I would think,
Right.
so that's perfect. And I hate to be jumping all over, but you mentioned the, Bliss Street and William Street, and there was in one of the reports, they talked about, the Hukilau, and saying that that could turn into a restaurant bar, which had been, and I started thinking about all that. So that basically, the shops area in the evening is turning into an entertainment district. When you have that number of bars, all within walking distance to each other. And so I think we really need to have another crosswalk at that end. Maybe something that would go like from where the Hukilau end over to Umi's, at that far end there. I think there might have to be a crosswalk there eventually
Well,
by the gas station.
there's pretty specific places where you can put them. Actually, on one side, we've already been given money from the shops by virtue of their mitigation to do speed tables on the Bliss Road side in between the shops and the Big Y. And we anticipate they would be the same on the other side. That's been delayed by when the Big Y approached us and said they want to renovate their store, which they've talked a lot about, mostly in the context of moving the bagel shop in the newspapers. We had talked to them about that, and so we haven't gone ahead and put in those speed tables because the Big Y may move their driveways. They were going to take a comprehensive look at their internal circulation between the gas station, store, in and out of the streets. And so we want to work with them and tie everything together. So I agree with you. I think that's something we are trying to plan for already, because there are crosswalks there, but they're not highly visible crosswalks.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where and I don't have a report on the Complete Streets thing because VHB is still developing the application. But, rapid flashing, push button operated rapid flashing beacons and things like that are things we're going to try and apply grants for and deploy those in like I said, very busy intersections.
Yeah, because I can anticipate we'll get more traffic crossing that street there, especially at night.
I mean, most of those places closed by like 11 o'clock, so it's not,
Yeah,
so it's an entertainment district to a point.
yeah. Well, we'll see. Depends what they could put what are those big ones with the guitars all the time, the
Hard Rock Cafe.
Hard Rock Cafe, Long Meadow. This is it.
I don't think we're our demographic.
I am highly skeptical of
I
that.
don't think we're their demographic.
Yeah.
Well, we
I
should
don't
be.
sleep
We
over
should
that.
be. Okay. So if there's no other questions for Stephen, we'll move on to our old business. We need to have an approval of the minutes for August 7th.
I move we approve the minutes of August 7th, 2017, regular select board meeting as presented.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor? All right, great. The next order of business is that we have to appoint quarterly board committee appointments, and we had folks come in for an interview the last meeting, and so I would like to, it's from the August 7th meeting, and we would appoint David Appleman and James Moulton to 2 3-year terms on the Building Committee. The Council of Aging Board of Directors, Marjorie Morgan would have a 1 3-year term just expiring 6/30/20, and Judy Yaffa, 1 3-year term expiring 6/30/19, and then she could run for re-election at that point. And the Historical Commission, Tim Casey will be on his first committee, one of 2 3-year terms expiring in 6/30/20, so it looks like we need another person on the Historical Commission. And so, all right, do we need a vote on that?
Need a motion.
We need a motion on that?
I move, what's your recommendations for?
Okay, a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All right, thank you. And so now we can continue our, it says continuation of the town manager's evaluation, and really it's gone to a discussion we had in executive session last meeting, and So the person who would forward the motion would be Marie, right? So if you want to,
Well, there's
Talk a little
the
bit about
amended
it.
motion, so
Mhm.
I move, let's see, I move to, you amended it, I made the motion, so
Oh.
I move that we give a $1,000 bonus to the town manager for the exceptional work that has been done this year above and beyond expectations. There was a lot of heavy lifting to be done, and Stephen worked hard.
That's a long motion.
Yes.
It's a long motion.
We'll start with
It
the
sounded like you
basic
slid into
thing.
discussion there, too.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
all right, fine, I move
The other
to,
motion.
I move to give a $1,000 bonus to the town manager.
A second?
Second.
All right, great. Now, discussion. Did you have anything to add to that, Marie?
No,
Any other folks? Everything to add to that? I know that, we looked at this past year, and there was a lot of things that happened, and a lot of positive things. And so, we discussed it quite a bit in executive session about a bonus. This is something different than we've done, but, when we looked at the amount of things that happened, the two-night town meeting, and, with all the different projects that have been put on board, dealing with some important staff issues. We've taken on a lot of new employees, a new head of department heads, and we've had no difficulty at all in any of the transitions that they've made. And then it's also had to deal with, two individuals who died working for the town. One was a vendor and was an employee. And so I support this motion also. I guess I'll call for a vote if there's
No,
no
we
further.
have some
I need
discussion?
to,
Yeah.
I need to actually amend it, I misread.
You dropped the zero?
She added one.
It was, I recommend that we give a $1,000,
I don't know what the record is. We wanted to drop the word bonus.
yeah, it's not a
Okay,
bonus.
yes,
It
we
was
did.
not a bonus, 'cause we don't have the guidelines set up for that.
Incentive, or,
Yeah, we just said it was
Appreciation.
It was appreciation,
That
an appreciation award that we were granting to our town manager for a job well done for the last year. And we had a long discussion in the executive session. We don't have to talk about that, but there was a lot of items put on the table. This group was not totally unanimous on it, but we had a very good discussion.
So I withdraw my motion
and
and put the new motion.
Put the new
of a
motion.
$1,000 appreciation.
Call it whatever you want, but it's just not a bonus. We don't have bonus
incentive
guidelines set up.
gift,
Okay.
Appreciation gift.
And you still second it,
Yeah, that's a
Steve?
second.
Richard, okay.
Yeah.
So, no further discussion?
Uh,
Yes.
Well, I was not present at the executive session, and to be honest with you, I'm stunned, surprised,
Well,
overwhelmed.
I don't know if you should be, we haven't voted on it.
You might
I
talk
think
us
you
out.
should wait until the
Well,
discussion.
let me say
I
this.
think you can comment after we.
And honestly, and I mean this in absolute sincerity, the fact that it was moved and seconded and is even being discussed by the board is really more important to me than even whatever the amount was. And that sounds somewhat strange to say that, but to me, the gift is the acknowledgement from the board. And like I said, I'm very surprised, pleasantly surprised, and I thank you for even considering it.
Oh, well, thank you. And,
An amendment to the
yeah, I don't believe he swayed the discussion at all inappropriately. So we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Okay, and abstention?
I'd like my vote recorded as not voting, please.
Not voting.
That's what I was told by the lawyer.
Okay, great. So, all right, well, congratulations, Stephen.
Thank you.
A great year.
Thank you.
So the next is the new business, and we would go to the audit compliance report. Paul, can bring us up to date on that.
The audit correction report that addresses the findings from the FY16 management letter. The FY17 audit will actually start next week. There's a here Monday and Tuesday. It's scheduled to be back in mid-September and then early October. Very quickly, I'll just try to give you a brief overview of what the finding was and where we are with it. The first one was a comparison that anything that we submitted for Chapter 90 reimbursement was actually charged to the Chapter 90 accounts on the accountant's ledgers. We have been doing that double check, and it's been done since January when kind of this management letter issue popped up, and we've continued to do it. So there's really nothing more to say about that one. I would expect that one to disappear with the FY17 audit. Number two, we had left open, there was a period of time where checks were not being cashed in a timely manner, mainly school checks for certain small amounts for certain fees that they had. That was rectified with some notifications by Tom Mazza to staff to get those put in a timely manner. Actually, since last May 31st, when we did the last report, I mean, there really haven't been many checks to really monitor this. So I'm assuming that once we go forward with the new year, everything will remain intact and they will be handed over in a timely manner and deposited into the Treasury, again, just in that timely manner. Number three dealt with, we had about $19,000 on our books worth of outstanding checks that we had put into what were known as tailings, basically stale check account. Back in May, we accepted a provision of the laws to have a procedure actually followed in which to notify employees or vendors, whoever those checks were outstanding for. There's a whole time frame and a whole slew of procedural matters that we go through before the town can actually make claim to those money themselves. We've gone through, the first process that we had to do was reconcile all the detail to that $19,000 that were on the account's records. That was done. Letters were sent out to anybody who was part of that $19,000 directly, notifying them that they had an outstanding check. If they came forward and wanted a check reissued, we reissued those checks for either payroll or vendor purposes. So a number of those have already been cleaned up because they were reissued and cashed. If procedurally they have not come forward because they've moved out of town, we can't notify them or anything like that. We procedurally have to go through a couple of the other steps before we can physically take possession of that money. The town can take physical possession of that money. So we're on task with that. We did the first part, and now I think we can't do the second part until there's a year interval between the time that those notices were sent out originally and the next step that we can take in this process. So we have started it, and we'll continue that process with any of these outstanding checks at periodic times. The other ones actually relate to prior year findings. The first finding had to deal with our fixed assets, where we wanted to implement the fixed assets under our computer software system, Munis. We tried to get that up and running. We could never get it exactly to where the previous Excel spreadsheets we had used were actually, I don't want to say in compliance, but were actually reconciled completely. The decision at this point in time, because we've tried to reconcile the two, is just to go back to those Excel spreadsheets. So we will have fixed assets inventories, but they're just going to be done on Excel spreadsheets as opposed to utilizing the Munis software. We finally just cut it and said, we have to go one way or another. And the Excel spreadsheets worked fine in the past. So we're going to go back to that old methodology in that regard. Prior year number 2 dealt with signatures from school payrolls and accounts payables being signed off on. We've dealt with that issue. The Municipal Modernization Act made some changes as to procedurally how many signatures we needed. That went into place. They set up a system and identified certain school committee people who can sign those. We followed that practice. It was reported back in May when this was done last that everything was in order and those signatures available if anybody ever wanted to see them. I'm sure the auditors will check them, but we continue to be in compliance with that finding, and I would assume, again, as most of these that one also will disappear when the next audit comes around. Number 3 actually dealt with certain procedures that departments were able to do and actually post directly into the general ledger. That was brought to our attention by the auditors. We went through and worked with IT in regard to setting up parameters for certain ones that we could actually stop from posting directly. So the town accountant will be or the assistant town accountant, well, the accounting office will be the place, and rightfully so, that will do the actual posting into the general ledger, wherever we could stop that. There are a few cases that people will still have direct postings into the general ledger, but because of the way that the utility, basically it's the utility software is set up, that those doing the utility input, which is really done at the water and sewer department, there will be a direct posting. However, as soon as that direct posting is made into the general ledger, the accounting office will be notified via an email immediately. So even though they're doing a direct posting, there will be a notification sent to the accounting office about that posting, that if they wanted to verify anything, they have an opportunity to verify it immediately. So we have found some roundabout ways to make this a little bit more secure if we couldn't get a direct way. So that will also take place, and those have been in place basically just over the last couple of weeks, that those have been implemented by IT, those changes. Number 4 actually dealt with the town's IT recovery plan. The town meeting made some appropriations for certain equipment that the IT people needed for backup purposes, and then kind of regionalization with East Long Meadow to share backup plans. So we'll be working with them. Nick George will be working with them to set up an exact plan of the regionalization, some offsite storage of data. We will have their data, they will have our data to a certain degree, in case something's happened directly to the IT equipment where it's located. But there will be kind of a mutual agreement on how that is shared. They also have the same software as the town of Long Meadow. I know we've shared printers in the past. There was a time that one of theirs broke down. I think it was for payroll purposes. Nick brought one of ours over to them so they could get their payroll out. So there is already a relationship developing with regard to the IT and the past practice. So we will have backup storage, and we will have backup kind of equipment should ever we need that to do certain things if something that we own goes down. The last one is the Student Activity Fund, which we had rectified probably almost a year ago now with a meeting with Tom Scanlon Jr., the auditor who did the Student Activity Funds. There was a meeting between myself, Tom Mazza, and some of our staff about certain things that went on with student activities. We've agreed upon procedures way back in actually before January, and have followed those agreed upon procedures ever since. So it's on here. There's really nothing to update on that. We're following the corrected procedures with regard to that. So I will turn it over to you folks if there are any questions on any of these issues.
Any questions or
Not for me.
comments? Okay, all right. Well, thanks, Bob.
Yep.
And we would go to the meter read fees, or meter read fee?
This is a fee that the Select Board as Water and Sewer Commissioners have discussed a few times over the last 4 or 5 years.
To the point where when it came up, I was like, I thought we did that.
Yeah, it's something that's actually never been voted upon, discussed.
We talked about it.
It's in regard to a final meter read fee when there's basically a closing on a house. Currently, there is no fee, but there is, I don't want to say an inconvenience, but there is some labor that goes on behind the scenes. There's somebody from the DPW has to go out and collect the data to see what that meter is actually reading. A bill has to be prepared and put it into the system, and then it gets into the system and it's paid off during the closing times between the lawyers and so on and so forth, and all the transactions that go on. It's a type of service that is provided. There's been a recommendation from the DPW, which I support. It would be a $50 fee if 3 or more days notice are given, a $100 fee for less than 100 days.
Less than 3 days.
Less than 3 days, yes, I'm sorry, $100 for less than 3 days. And the main reason is there's many times that the lawyer will call up very last minute and say, I have a closing at 4 o'clock this afternoon, can you guys go out and settle all this? And we just, if we can avoid that, the extra cost will be avoided. But at the same time, the town is incurring some additional services that are being provided to make all that.
Does the
Information
homeowner
bill.
have the ability to do that themselves? Can they?
We wouldn't want the homeowner to.
No.
Really?
I mean, the homeowner can look at the meter and give you a fictitious number, and we certainly wouldn't want that to happen.
Take a picture of it.
Okay, Mark?
No.
Well,
I mean, in my business, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
I move that the town adopt a special water meter reading fee that would be payable to the town for any water meter reads outside our normal schedule in the amount of $50 for reading 3 or more days' notice, and $100 for less than 3 days' notice.
Okay, do we have a second on the fee?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, so now we can have some
Right.
discussion, and you,
Yeah, I'd like to start off. I've been in favor of this. I've talked about it off and on, and it's kind of one I think kind of prodded Stephen and Paul that we didn't have this. When we went to automatic meter reading, the idea was we eliminated the meter readers who were out walking. We actually had 2 people full-time who walked around the town all the time reading meters. Now we have 1 person who goes out a couple of days a year, I think, and drives around with a truck and reads the meters. And so when we have to do a special meter read, it's real cost. Somebody has to drop what they're doing and go out and read this meter. And you know, they don't actually go in the house and read the meter. They just have to drive a truck close enough to capture the signal, but process that signal separately from everybody else and go through the meter read. And because it's a special job that you have to take somebody away from what they're doing, we often get little or no notice. I think the fee is nominal and certainly represents the actual added cost to the town to do these special meter reads. And so that's why I'm in favor of, I think it's the right thing to do. And you know, the fact that we even would do it with, I have a closing at 4 o'clock this afternoon shocks me, but certainly that kind of thing, you know, is a drop everything you're doing. I have a sign in my office that I love to show people, and it says, bad planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part, and this is a response to that, so I support it.
and yes, Marie?
My concern, 120 and 50 seems steep. What is the average, do you know what other towns are charging? I mean, when you start adding all these fees at closing, they become crazy.
I do not know what other communities charge, or if they have this implemented, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
I mean, I'd prefer 25 to 50.
I mean,
Because,
we've looked
yeah.
at it from a time standpoint, you know, even if the DPW person doesn't have to go out there, there's still the administrative work of getting that into the system, getting it all set, and then getting the information over to the lawyer. Kind of, there's still some administrative work that needs to go through.
Mhm.
I think in the context of.
Yeah, Maria? Go on.
I move to amend the regular reading from 50 to go down to 25. 50 seems pretty high.
Mhm.
Bill, do you have any idea of what's going on out
I
there?
don't know. I
Mhm.
defer to Paul and Stephen as to the time
Mhm.
and the expense of entering this. It would be nice if there were a voluntary way somebody could do it themselves, but I get that, you know, it's tough to police that, and you don't really know. A person could take a picture of somebody else's water meter, I mean, and send it to you. So I mean, it works in my business because people just, I don't know, it just seems to work. You know, we have a closing, and a lawyer calls up and said, I have to do one this week. Can you go read the bond? Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
It cost anybody anything.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you guys have thought about this issue a lot longer than me in town, and so if you're convinced that that really can't be done, you know, honestly and properly, then, and again, I defer to you guys as the cost of inputting in the time and all that.
Right, and again, even if they did take a picture, there's still the administrative cost that's associated with producing a single bill for the whole process.
Right. Any other?
Well, the only thing, I'm not too wed either way on it. I can tell you one thing, I've never heard of a charge like this, and I've had like 10, 15 closings. It's never been on there. It's never a closing charge. It's something public utility just takes care of, but I don't know, you know, I'm not questioning what we're saying, I just don't know what makes us special. Why all of a sudden do we have to charge for something that I've lived in 10, 15 houses and had closings and it's never been an issue?
Tom, from my perspective,
Well, wait, so
Richard,
I was going to comment,
Go
and
ahead.
then you could comment a second time after. Because you know, I'm listening to Marie and Richard, and I mean, I was originally thinking like 35, 75, something of that, but it does seem, it is something that people are supposed to do. That's their job, is to read these meters. And so you're not asking them to do anything out of the ordinary unless they have to have it done within a day or two, and then I would see a $75 charge or something like that. But it's, it is a penalty to the person selling the home, which is our taxpayer, So I really agree with you if we can avoid that kind of a charge. And then if it's a regular, if they give them, if they, enough days' notice, I mean, I think that is the job. And even if you had to do it in one day, $75 would more than cover the time it would take for a person to drive in our 7-mile area of town and, have the machine read it and then come back to the place. I mean, you could do it in 5-10 minutes, I would think. So I would agree with Maria as far as, looking for a lower fee. Just, that's what I think. And Mark, yes.
Yeah, I think, Tom, the point is, it isn't anybody's job to read the meters on next Thursday.
Yeah.
And when it was, like I said, when we had 2 full-time meter readers, that was their job. And so there was generally somebody in that zone or near that zone.
Yeah.
But at this point, we have our water department, who are interchangeable with our DPW workers, assigned to do something else. That was the justification for the automatic meter reading system. So to say, Tom, next Tuesday, you're going to go read that meter, means Tom, and you know as well as I do, it's not 5 minutes. Stop what you're doing, get in the car, drive out there, grab the data, come back with the data, and not doing whatever else you were going to do, give that information to the administrator who gets it in the system and creates the report. It's not it's your job anyway. That day it wasn't your job.
Right.
And so this is your job is to do it twice a year. That's what we pay you to do. And to do it a third time or a fourth time or an extra time a year, I think deserves supplemental payment. And that's my response, Richard, why
Okay.
we don't have people that, our goal was to eliminate standard water meters, and we paid a good amount of money to put that into.
Okay,
do
well,
that.
for Richard and then Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the arguments sound good because you can make any rules you want to put with them, but our water and sewage people are already paid out of the rates for the entire year. Their salary is paid for. That's why we set the rates to cover their salary. So it's not a fact that you're adding something new, it's a fact that that's what they're going to do for this morning. They're going to go up and take a reading. I don't, as I say, Mark, if I'd seen it in other places, I'd feel it's more justified, but it kind of rings that thing Taxachusetts to me. It's like we're putting a fee that I've never seen any other municipality, any place I've ever lived, have. And, you get you, Stephen. And I'm sorry, I do not believe that our staff has every minute of the day dedicated to a task. That's not the real world. That may be the world somebody wants to describe, but that's not the real world. So I don't agree with the fee. I just don't think it's needed.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Stephen? you-
I just Googled
Closing.
water meter read fee Massachusetts, and I'm just going through a little bit, but they exist in many communities.
How much?
Taxachusetts.
Seen 50. I just saw 50 in Norfolk, Mass. Boston has one for. Boston's was $25 for a single-family home, but I don't know how many single-family homes Boston has. So, like I said, I think there's, and I'm sure if I did more research, I actually think there are probably a lot of communities that do assess this.
Yeah.
And it's a benefit to our utility because there is a time involved, and in the 100 does seem like a lot, but the point of it is to incentivize people to give us more notice so we can plan the work, and so another job isn't being displaced. I do think it's something that we should have. I think we talk about revenue generation. This is a revenue opportunity that we're really foregoing by not having it. Like I said, I'm sure most communities do this. I know we're not inventing it here.
Okay. So we're on, you had made a.
Yeah, but I guess my amendment was only partial, so I amended to 25 and 75.
25 and 75. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
You'll second it? Okay, any discussion on the second motion for 2575, which would decrease people doing the last minute ones, because it would be a lot more costly, but I think it's, yeah, I agree, it's reasonable. Any other comments? Okay, so I'll call for a vote on the amended motion for 25 and 75. All those in favor? Okay,
All those
opposed?
opposed?
Okay. And then we have to go to the original
Mhm.
motion, which was 75 and 100, or no, 50 and
No, it's
100.
not,
modified.
no, it's now 25 and 75.
Okay, so we don't have to go back.
It's been amended.
That's been amended,
Okay,
but you got to do the original motion.
and we do have to do the original
Mm-hmm.
motion, and that
As
has to be
amended.
voted down, right?
Or vote it up or down, whichever way it's going to go.
That's where always going to go.
Yeah.
So the motion, which was 50 and 100,
It's
No,
been amended,
no.
has been
has
amended
been amended
to what's the
to
total?
25 and 75.
25 and 75, so that is the motion that's currently on the table.
That's the amended motion. All of those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we'll move forward with that new fee schedule. Good discussion. And next would be the maintenance and public landscape agenda item, which, Marie, I believe you're,
Sorry, what is it?
the landscapes, maintenance of public
Oh.
landscape.
Okay.
And I know we did
This is
one.
something we've been battered around for years,
Yeah.
and Richard calls it standards. I feel like we've really worked hard, and the streets are looking better. I mean, Converse is looking so beautiful, and Merriweather, that was a great job, and the sidewalks we were investing in. But I think the quality of our community, we look at our triangles, we look at our areas in front of our public buildings, unless the volunteers are working really hard to plant some beautiful flowers, I think everything looks a little tired. And some of our greens are that empty of plantings. And so I know we've talked about possibly having sponsorship on triangles. I know that requires a whole bylaw. I know we've talked about doing some extra work around our schools and our public buildings, and I thought we'd just bring it up for discussion, because as I've always been told by town manager, you have to invest in the budget. You can't just say, let's do this, because it's a allocation of resources. And I guess at the same time I was thinking about this, the town manager was actually addressing some of the issues.
Mhm.
So that was why I was asking for it to have on the agenda.
Okay. Any other, Mark?
Yeah, I had some questions, Stephen, about this document, the maintenance of public landscapes document. Is it a DPW document or a Parks and Rec Department document primarily?
It's
Because
a DPW document.
Okay, because it had stuff about how to reserve fields and things that, which I thought.
It was probably done some years ago, but
Okay.
but the grounds division part of it is.
So the fact that it's a grounds division document, if it presumably sets standards for upkeep, it would seem to me that the budget proposals that we get every year should say, here are our standards, and here's what it's going to take to maintain the standards. But what we've done is had, and this is not an indictment, but kind of a unilateral reduction in funding of what they think the budget is, and a reduction in maintaining the standards, without a discussion of whether the town, the select board, is willing to fund the maintenance of these standards, or we should change the standards. So I see, there's nothing wrong with the standards that we have. The issue is the not just compliance, but actually having the resources to achieve these standards. And I think there's nobody who doubt that, we spent $77 million on a high school, and here we are 4 or 5 years later, and the front of the high school looks worse than the old high school did, with the weeds and the sand and the dust. And I understand it's a matter of resources. So my response to this is, if we believe in the standards, then we direct the town manager to tell us what resources it takes to achieve these standards. And if we believe in the budget, then we tell the town manager, come back and tell us what kind of appearance we're going to have based on the budget that we've been approving. It's one or the other. And I mean, talk about what our role is versus your role. This is clearly our role, is to either fund it or change the standards.
Well, I think I want to split if I may.
Yes, Stephen.
Because I think ultimately, the select board can adjust if I present a budget that recommends $150,000 increase for the grounds division for 2 more full-time employees and another piece of equipment. And that's, I could do that. The select board could either increase or reduce that. One of the issues is that we have in the past increased the money for additional seasonal help. We've tried to look at contracting services. We've kind of picked at the edges of this, and this is kind of falling. The other thing is we've had a new director, and we're on our 3rd new grounds foreman in the time I've been here. And so, as I think the department would tell you, I am highly reluctant to throw money at problems. I'm usually prove you're getting, the most out of what you have before you ask for more. And the grounds division, I think, has certainly fallen in that category. And they do. The one thing I appreciate about Superintendent or DPW Director Mazza's memo is that he articulates what the priorities for the division are, and they are priorities that have been agreed upon, I think, even before I got here. These are the priorities in order when I stepped into the job, and I think generally they make sense for the community, and they are in order. Fields for high school scholastic sports, and the reason why that's at the top of the priority list is because oftentimes you have, well, first of all, other teams won't schedule games here if the fields aren't of a certain standard, and then you have our student athletes, some of whom may be playing for potential scholarships or something else. You want to give them the best service we can. And the reports I've received on the playing fields this year for the scholastic sports have been very good. And they've been, in our discussion, the principal of the high school was there, and he did say that information he's gotten back from his athletic director is there's been an improvement over the last few years in the fields. So the second priority is fields used by recreation department, and then followed by town parks. And so that's the second tier of what we try and get to, and that's our Wolf Swamp Field, Turner Park, things like that, and Stropel and DePippo, and it's a mixed bag on those. I'll be candid about that. And then town school grounds and town building grounds, like the areas around town hall and the areas around the schools. And then lastly, traffic islands. And we have a list of all the traffic islands in the community, and this came up a couple years ago. Many of them are maintained by the neighbors. And we had one where the neighbor who was maintaining it moved, and nobody told us it's that way down the end of a street that we don't really go down. And we caught a bunch of flack for the condition of the island, and it was on our list that somebody was supposed to be maintaining it. And so that's one of the issues with traffic islands. When we have opportunities to talk to people, like Big Y adopted the island at the triangle out on where Bliss and Williams converged, and that was nice. They didn't put a sign up, but they agreed to do that because they came to us for a sign, permit application to convert the gas station. And said, hey, while you're here, let's say you do this, because we do want outside help. The conversation with the school district was prompted by the condition of the high school, and it when we're not paying attention to it, it looks terrible. When we dedicate the manpower and resources to come out here and do the work, we do make it look nice. But the problem, the fundamental issue with the high school is, and Mark, you were on the committee for a while, what we thought we were getting was a drought-resistant, low-maintenance landscaping plan. And I'm not a horticulturalist or a landscape designer, so I can't tell you what plants out there or what variety of grass we have. But I can tell you that that the landscaping that's in place now is neither drought-resistant nor low-maintenance. And I don't know what happened in between, and I don't have the level of technical expertise, but I remember sitting in those meetings at the school building committee, and this is what we were told. And it was a significant amount of money was spent on landscaping, and I think by and large it was intended to make the high school look great, and we wanted to kind of keep that. But I think we knew early on we did not have the manpower to keep up with the fine landscaping around the high school, and I think we're gonna have an honest conversation about how much does it cost every year to maintain that landscaping, and to what end, meaning how much benefit does the high school actually get out of having it, and do we need to make a change? Is it more cost effective to maybe change some of the landscaping and put in and simplify it a little bit? The other thing is some of the stuff that was put in just never took. And that's kind of an issue. So we are looking at this in as a holistic a possible way as we can. I am heartened by the fact that the school superintendent wants to be a partner on this, wants to work with us through the budget process to make sure that not only Long Meadow High School, but all of the schools have improved conditions on the surrounding grounds, and we support that as well. I think they know that we can't, the town side of the budget can't absorb any increased cost by itself. But to your point, to Marie's point about overall maintenance of town buildings, I mean, we could improve. What I've been searching for 4 years is specific things that we can do other than more manpower. More manpower to do what? You know, where is the and really document that. And Mario has been good about trying to quantify that for us. But again, turnover in the division has been an impediment to that. But we've kind of, and I think it was commented on during my evaluation that some things kind of fell off the table while we were focused on the bigger projects, especially this past spring. And I would suggest that addressing the grounds division and really kind of not reforming, but trying to get more out of the grounds division so we can then be specific and say, here's what we need to get us over the finish line, and then I will feel confident I can deliver better results. That effort is one of the things that definitely fell off the table. And so now we're trying to pick it back up in a more detailed way.
Okay, thank you for giving us that update. Marie?
I think what you just laid out is probably the problem. It's the very bottom of the list, of the priority list, is our towns and buildings. And I still say when people go to move into town, they look, and that just gives a really bad feeling of what is the operations behind the town. And we're looking at weeds, we're not looking at grass, and it's a sad feeling many times. And like you said, a lot of that is the drought, but you're just looking at tall weeds. There's just absolutely no grass in a lot of these sections, and it is going to take some manpower. It's going to take putting resources towards it.
Right.
And our triangles, so many of our triangles are very sad. I know everyone agrees with it, what the solution's going to be, what resources we're all willing to put into it. I know when it comes down to it, the athletic departments and the playing groups are very vocal. And I think we need to have more people coming out and saying, yeah, we really want to see more gardens. We want to see we want to see better grass. We want to see neater areas. And, the volunteers work so hard and they do a beautiful job. And, I think we need to do more to support them financially, as well as have them come in and help us with the design in front of the buildings. I know a couple of years, you and I talked about this, and you said it's going to take probably multiple years and a substantial investment to when you drive up to the center of town and look at our municipal buildings. It's something that we've really been able to grow. I just wanted to bring this up so that we could start that multi-year process and going forward.
If I can
Okay.
comment just a little further.
Yeah.
The Gardeners on the Green, who are just a wonderful group of volunteers, have spent many, many hours. In fact, they raise money to hire usually a high school kid to come along and water the plants and do all that stuff they've done. This summer, a grounds division employee, a full-time grounds division employee, spent maybe a week at town hall and at the police station redoing the mulch, trimming the bushes, pulling the weeds, doing everything. And it was the first time I have the corner office there. I really hadn't seen any of that, and it made it look really good. And to me, that was really a focusing event on this issue. That it looks a lot. You kind of see it every day. It's almost like the coffee stain on the carpet. If you walk by it enough times, you no longer see it. And it really highlighted for me the need. Now, I'll tell you, we're going to get to another agenda item where people talk about the condition of fields, and what I found is, I'm going to be candid, people are going to complain about it no matter what it looks like. I have received no positive feedback from the community on how nice the police station looks. So that's one of the reasons why it's tough to fight for it as a priority when people have other priorities and it's a zero-sum game. But it needs to be done. I agree with you. One of the things we're talking about for Town Hall is a capital project to redo the parking area and put in, curbs along the driveways so we don't have the muddy ruts and things like that. Because the single biggest problem, especially if you look outside here, we're in the administrative wing of the high school, there are small little patches of grass outside the doors that are lined with sidewalks, and, you know, calcium chloride or ice melt does a number on grass. And that's something that we simply can't back off of, because I think people would agree, having safe sidewalks so people don't slip, fall, break a leg is still more important than having, you know, lush grass right up to the edge of the sidewalk. And, you know, that's, I don't know if there's, until they make a fertilizer or a grass seed that's more resistant to that, that doesn't need irrigation, because irrigation out in the high school is not installed, because we're supposed to have a drought-resistant landscaping plan. So that's the thing. I mean, and to your point, I know people want to make it look better. There are, you know, ergonomic, I'm not like I said, a horticulturalist, but I know you need fertilizer, water, things like that, and there are structural barriers to doing that type of stuff sometimes with some of our buildings, especially schools, where you cannot apply fertilizers and things like that when school's in session. And so you have this narrow window, and a lot of times if it's raining or something like that, we don't get the opportunity to do it. And so there are valid reasons why things don't always look great, but that doesn't mean that we haven't been putting our best foot forward on it either. So that's one of my commitments in the coming years. We've kind of talked about goals. One of my goals is to really get things moving in the right direction, where I can, like I said, ask you for something, and if I get it, feel confident that I'm going to be able to deliver the results at the end of it.
Okay, and yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing. Is you know, when you, like college campuses, you know, they always make the place look great at graduation time. You know, they do a lot of work because they know a lot of people are going to be there, and they want the campus to look nice at graduation. And when I think about, like, the high school, you know, when we have our town meeting, you know, and when we have the high school award ceremonies and the concerts, you know, well, the concerts are mostly in the winter, but, you know, there should be that time in the spring that, you know, it really does look good. And of course, this year we had a lot of rain, and so if people complaining this year, we're going to be in trouble in a really bad summer. Marie, you had something else you wanted to say?
I just wanted to build up what Stephen said. I was glad to hear you know, working with the gardeners and the resources, so, because I think, I don't want us to just, the town to go off on its own. I think we really should use the resources and talk to the gardeners to see what their recommendations are about design and what they feel is needed in the area. So glad to see that's already starting.
All right. So we'll move on to the next one, which is the reaffirm the parkland discussion. And there was an article in the town meeting regarding that, Article 42, I believe, and it was to reaffirm the use of the land and structures located at 301 Laurel Street, known as Bliss Park, and 337 Long Meadow Street, known as Laurel Park, as parkland, in accordance with the vote taken in the past, but, you know, recently we had another vote for town. And so I guess, you know, where do we go with this? You
It was
know,
approved at town meeting.
it's approved at town meeting,
Yeah.
but is there some sort of a official step that we need to take? Because we had, you know, this person last week who came in.
Yeah, because we can't take any action against that, contrary to the vote of town meeting.
Well, I talked to town council about this, and I don't have,
Minutes.
we talked about it over the phone. And he may, you know, if we want a more formalized opinion, the town meeting vote was an advisory vote to the select
Right.
board. It was not the town meeting as a legislative branch does not have the authority under our charter to do this kind of thing.
Right,
It's a
you're
select
right.
board authority.
Yeah, you're right.
And I want to just kind of lay out
Yeah.
the kind of facts of the matter before we get into the substance of the issue.
Thank you.
And so basically, it is it's basically town meeting, and it was a citizens petition, but it's basically town meeting saying, select board, we want you to take this action. And then it's the select board's decision
Mhm.
whether or not to take it. So that is the kind of legal status of the article.
Right.
And that's exactly how it reads.
Mhm.
And it kind of slipped off my radar in terms of getting it in front of the select board to kind of initiate a discussion on it. And somebody dropped by the office and asked about it, and I was like, I appreciated the reminder. And
Well,
so,
we had Patrick Carnahan who came in from 311 Farmington Road, and he asked us to know what the status was on this, so.
and someone had even stopped by before that, and I put it on this meeting because I knew I'd be here, and I wanted to kind of help guide the discussion, because and it's, you know, I think there's a bigger context to this that I think the board should at least discuss as it contemplates this step. You know, I think there's, and a lot of this ties back to, quite honestly, the discussions about citing the DPW and the senior center. And there were people who mobilized to make it clear they did not want these areas developed, and I completely understand that. I don't think anybody felt great about you know, going deep into these parks and developing them. My primary concern, and we've kind of, it's been kind of a slow-moving thing, but we are working on our long-range plan, and we are trying to basically assess, you know, where the town is going from a growth standpoint. And as we've discussed many times, the town is largely built out. The cost to run the town and provide high-quality services goes up every year, oftentimes beyond the 2.5% we can increase. And at some point in time, in the relatively near future, under the state constitution as is presently written, we are going to hit our limit on terms of how much more we can assess to, you know, increase property taxes. Those costs to run the town are still going to go up. And my primary concern, and this has not, I mean, I don't think anybody wants to see Laurel or Bliss Park developed. I certainly don't. My thing is more of a principled thing. If you do this, you tie future policymakers' hands really permanently from having options. So hypothetically speaking, we go out 20 years, and now we're looking at class sizes of 35, we're looking at, you know, empty shifts for the police department, you know, library, I mean, you know, draconian cuts. And I'm not trying to be a fearmonger here, I'm just saying this is, the things that are funded by general fund, things, you know, services are gonna have to do, you know, landscaping and things like that, you know, that'll be the first type of stuff to go. How are we going to continue to meet the needs of the community absent a change to state law? Now, one of the things that was said at town meeting by the proponents of the article was that you can take things out of Article 97 if you needed to, which is true. We went through that in great depth here when we were talking about, in particular, Wolf Swamp Fields. But under the EOEEA policy guidelines regarding Article 97, if you do this and take it under recreation or conservation, you have to give up replication space somewhere else in your community for that purpose. And when we started looking at Wolf Swamp Fields, for example, there was virtually nothing available. And if you encumber these parcels for Article 97, and you decide, geez, we need to offer them for development to continue to generate tax revenue, and not you, I mean some future select board and future town manager, when you go to try and take it out of Article 97, you're not going to have any alternatives. And so that, again, that would take a legislative change at the State House to make that happen. And so I don't necessarily object to the select board doing this. I just feel compelled as the town manager and the town planner to say, this will have a permanent effect, and I can't predict, you know, if that effect will really be detrimental to maintaining the services and the quality of life in the community long term. So I just want to put that out there for the board as you guys contemplate what do you want to do on this.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, you know, we made an observation, and you're right, Steve, I forgot about that, because that's not an automatic on this one. It comes back to us for action. We had talked, when this issue was brought before on the citizens petition, if I'd lived on Farmington and brought this petition forth as a select board member, it'd be an ethics violation.
Yeah.
The petition was very strongly supported by a very small group of people that lived on Farmington. And it was pretty pronounced when they brought it forward that they were thinking about their backyards. And it seemed, I'm not saying that's the only thing they were thinking, but it's certainly what seemed to bring the fever out to protect that strip of land that's behind their houses. And I don't think it's in the best interest of our community to tie that up in 97. I sincerely, I said that then. I oppose it because I think we're inside, we're seeing all these figures roll up every year. We understand that the fiscal crisis is going to eventually hit us, and we're not going to have options. And for us to willy-nilly or arbitrarily take more options off the table, I think is a very unwise direction for our board to be going. I don't think we're really looking for the future of our total community when we're doing that. There's some innovative things that can be done in our communities to preserve green space and use green space more. I mean, we have hundreds of acres of conservation land now that really are sitting idle. We haven't talked about re-energizing and doing something with them, and that may take legislation, but I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, Stephen, you know how much conservation land we've got. I mean, even over at the Pomeroy plot, there's what, like 15 acres back in there. It could be a beautiful area it could be for recreation, it could be anything back. Right now, it's community gardens. But there's a lot of beautiful plots down on the river. I mean, you go on this Connecticut side of the river, and it's beautifully developed with walkways and everything else. You come over our side, and it's swampland. And, you know, you sit there and say, what's wrong? Why have we got swampland on there? Why aren't we developing our own riverfront? But yet, we can't seem to get that going in town, to get that thought process. It's like you're talking about the beautification and the visual quality standards. You know, Stephen and I, we've had several discussions on visual quality standards. They're very, very important for people that come through our community. It's the first thing they see is the signs and that, and then they settle down to the schools and all that. But it's that first opening page is very important. So I'd encourage the board not to push forward on Article 97. I'd let another board do it if they deem it important, but I personally can't support it. I don't think it's a wise decision.
Okay. Yes, Mark?
I guess I'm reading the article as passed, and it was amended and as passed at the town meeting. I don't see where it says we remand this to the select board for their decision. I mean, it clearly says it was moved and seconded that the town vote to reaffirm the use of park land and structures located at 301 Laurel Street, also known as Bliss Park, and 337 Longmeadow Street, also known as Laurel Park, as parkland in accordance with the vote taken at February 28, 1934 town meeting Article 9. And it goes on, but nowhere does it say subject to, I thought it was a done deal. And I got to tell you, I would suspect that if the people who voted for this, and it did pass by a majority, and it wasn't a close majority, it was a vote that was directed by the moderator as opposed to a count, the people voting for it, I believe, thought that they were voting for a final decision and not, you know, it's an advisory vote going back to the select board. So I'm going to go back to where Richard started this by saying, why is it coming up to us? You know, I don't think it's our decision. I appreciate, Stephen.
I can answer that.
We got town council vote, but
Where it says is, it says, the first part of it establishes what the intent of this is, and then you hit a semicolon and says, further, to authorize and direct the Board of Selectmen to take any and all actions necessary to ensure that's for park and conservation purposes, and to execute and record Hampden County, you know, any documents, it's, you know, blah, blah, blah. Article. So the execution of the confirmatory taking as a shorthand terminology for what they wanted to have happen here is up to the select board to execute.
I think we're asking for a revision to this at the next town meeting by citizens petition, because I think that they thought that they were directing us to go to the Hampden County Board of whatever and record what they voted on. I really believe that that's what the thought was. And if there's some kind of ruling that's making this arbitrary, and again, I'm just saying, I was sitting there, I was listening to it, I heard the discussion, I heard the amendments, and for somebody, and I assume it's our town attorney, and I haven't talked to him, so I don't know, reading to this, that it now, the execution and filing of this in the Hampden County Board of Records it's to some degree up to us. It just is counter to what I thought the town was voting for, and I would, and I think that's to some degree what we heard from the person who was here last time is, have you recorded it? Not did you vote on it, but did you record it? Whether I'm in favor of this or not, that's what I thought I heard.
Okay, Maria, please.
Yeah, that was my understanding too, that this was a town vote, and I think we sort of understood that it is town of Long Meadow feel strongly very much about their parkland. Now, we're not talking about Water Tower property, we're not talking about other property that's definitely not parkland. This has always been designated parkland in the tradition of Long Meadow. Now, if there's a feeling on this board that there was a minority of people, and this is going to be a huge decision that affects everyone, and you want to institute a process where it's put on the ballot in June, that this is reaffirmed by the majority of the voters, I could see that, but I don't see the select board arbitrarily saying, you know, I know you voted that way, but we just don't like that idea. And so then you end up with a vote of 5 that 1 or 2 people are really making that final decision on whether it's going to go to 97. So process in place. I know it is a serious decision. I'm putting something in 97. It's not, cannot be turned back. We're going to hit the wall. We're going to run into a crisis, whether it's the pension or the OPEB, and it's coming out sooner rather than later. Putting this in, I don't think that Long Meadow, when we listen to the survey, is saying, well, we're going to run into a crisis, so our first choice is going to be to develop Park Lane. No, their first choice is going to be shut the libraries. What else did they say? Get rid of senior services. Yeah, start paying for your
program.
garbage, the music program. So those other things, but I don't think the survey said that's their number one choice. So I would say either we move along on the vote, or if you feel that there was not enough vote, put it on a ballot in June.
Okay, Richard, I just want to see if anyone else
Well,
had.
he's got the legal opinion, though, that's,
He had-
Well, I mean, I can certainly
Yeah.
ask Mike to formalize that.
Yeah.
He was reading the article when we were discussing it.
Okay.
it seemed like a discussion came up with you and I when I was on the chair on another issue that was very similar to this. That we thought the town meeting ruled it, but the town meeting did not rule it. They kind of said, this is our feelings on what we want to take place. And it was still up to the board to take that action. But they weren't mandated by that vote.
Yeah, I mean, there's some citizens petitions, like if there's a citizen petition that proposes a specific bylaw, that can have, that can be enforced, but then there's citizens petitions to say, we're a pollinator-friendly community, but that doesn't have any,
Right.
it's a sense of the thing, and that was, and again, it's not, there are legal processes in place to handle land use decisions and land use transactions. It's not, it's not a political thing, it's just this is how we do it. And so I think that's what town council's takeaway on this was that it's not, there are steps to do this. If we want to have him, come in here or do a written opinion on this, I think we can do that.
I'd like to see something like that. Because this, I'm with Marie, this clearly says they voted to direct us to record this. I mean, it's,
Yeah, right. It's,
They voted us to recommend we take action.
recommend we take
And
action.
as I say, and I think that's the point where he's talking about that they're not empowered to do the action. We have to do the
right,
action.
Does the legislative branch have the authority to issue that directive, is I think what
Right.
we're trying to get to. And again, I want to separate it really is just, we want to make sure the process is right. I have concerns about the proposal generally. I'm not opposed to it in principle. I just want to make sure town meeting did not have a really two-sided conversation about what the long-lasting impacts of this are. And the people who supported it are passionate about the parks, but the board is here to represent the interests of everyone and to plan for the community's future, financial future. And I think, Marie, if, you hate to be a future board member would hate to be in a position of being like, geez, we could really save some programs if we, built offered a small part of Bliss Park for development or something like that, and then not have the ability to make that decision. And again, I think we all hope we never get there. I agree with you. We're trying to do stuff now so we avoid that altogether. But I just want to make sure that we're clear on what the process is and what this means.
All right, I'd like to comment also, because everyone's gotten a chance to speak once. And so, yeah, this is a difficult one for me, because, I really like to protect, forested areas in town. I really think that's important. They're not inactive. I think they're active doing what they do best. They're woods, that's where people visit them and relax. And when I think of the Laurel section of that, of those properties, I mean, that is just, always, I think they used it for the town swimming pool for a while. There was a creek they dammed up, and people would swim in there.
It's because it belonged to the waterworks.
Yes, and but that, so I think, if we took a vote on that, I'd have no problem, supporting that. But the more difficult one is the one that's already started to be developed, and with Bliss Park, where we have activities for all different age groups, and it would be nice if we could separate out the wooded areas from the areas that have already been started to be developed or been used over time, but I don't believe you can do that. I think it's just all or nothing. But it would be nice if there was an opinion on that, if we could see if there'd be some way to split, because it sounds like a lot of folks on the board are concerned about concerned about Bliss Park. I don't know for sure, but, if there was a way that could be split, for the wooded areas in comparison to the playground area on Bliss Street that, they've been using as a playground. And it sounded like the original board kind of designated a difference between those areas also. But, I get the sense we're going to have to vote. I mean, we could ask the town council, but I don't think that's.
Wait a minute, I think it's highly inappropriate to call for a vote when.
Oh, I'm
we've
not
got
calling for a vote.
Oh,
But I'm
okay,
saying,
we got we need the town council to weigh in.
No, we'd have to look at that a little more. Mark?
No, I'm not calling for a vote. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure everybody hears what this article said.
Sure.
Okay? And again, I'm reading.
I think we
okay?
got it.
Yeah, we heard it.
No, but we didn't get it. I think it was
What-
misrepresented, Tom. So I'd like to just take a minute. It's going to take me
Well, the only
1
thing
minute to
we're not
read this.
getting is that
And-
we don't want to do a vote right now.
But people need to understand the discussion. It said that authorize and direct the selectmen to take any and all such actions, and there were two things. To ensure the use of said Bliss Park and Laurel Park for park and conservation purposes, and to execute and record at the Hampden County Registry of Deeds any and all documents as may be necessary to protect said parkland pursuant to Article 97 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, including without limitation conservation restrictions. The town shall not be authorized to take any action with regard to Bliss Park and Laurel Parks inconsistent with the intent of this warrant article until these properties are legally recognized as falling under the protection of said Article 97. That's what passed. So it was to take any action, but it was to execute and record pursuant to Article 97. That's what we were directed to do.
Right.
We weren't directed to
Okay.
think about it.
You can vote however you want, Mark, but let's get a
Yeah.
legal opinion on it. So that then we're weighing a legal opinion against our personal opinions.
Maureen?
Just want to say, we're opening a can of worms, because let me explain why.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have our attorney come,
Mm-hmm.
and there were several attorneys that were actually making opinions on the Chapter 97 issue also. So there's going to be not just one legal opinion that's going to come in front of us next time. It's going to open the discussion, which I understand that's probably, you feel that that's important to do because we need to get this process established, because I'm supporting the vote that went through. But of course, let's lay this open. If this had been Turner Park or Water Tower, I would be freaking out right now, because
it could
that's
be.
what I feel is
It could
our,
be.
But you
that's
don't know
our
that it would have
essential.
passed if it was Turner Park.
I know.
or-
It could be.
I know. So that's why, I know that's where you're coming from. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, the people have spoken, not just on this article, but everything that we've heard the past 2 years in regards to actual park use. And this is park. Water Tower and Turner Park are not parks.
Right.
To begin with. So that's where I'm distinguishing it. But I know, okay, we're going to have 4 legal opinions the next time we come up, and that's fine. Maybe it needs to be heard, and that we're going to, come and we're going to open this up. But
So
That's
the
my
water-
opinion.
The
So,
water
hey,
may get
I'm forewarned.
murkier. A little more
Hey, Tom.
murky. Yes, Stephen?
There may be 4 lawyers who want to talk about it. There is one legal opinion for the select board, and that's from town council. There may be a bunch of lawyers in the room, there's only one lawyer that represents this board. And so I think if you say there's gonna be 4 legal opinions, there's only one legal opinion that is written specifically with the board as the client. And I wanna make sure we don't lose sight of that when everybody comes in and knows more than everybody else. All I'm saying about this is, and we can certainly do that, and if town council, if he reverses, not reverses, but if he says, looking at it further, you're right, we need to do this, I'm fine with that. I just feel it's my obligation, because I don't see this as an issue in my time here or anybody else's time here on the board. I see this as something 25 years out.
Right.
And like I said, God willing, we never get there, but right now, I don't see another pathway to not getting there. And I thought, 25 years from now, someone's gonna be sitting in this chair being like, God, it'd be nice if we could have done something here, but 25 years ago, they gave away this opportunity for nothing. Why did they do that? And that's the only reason why I bring it up.
Okay, so I'd like to close the discussion on this if I
Well,
can.
I just have one
Yes?
question that the attorney could answer, and that is, should we be considering a ballot question on something like this? So that's,
But a ballot question may not be one of the.
I know, that's why I'm just
Okay.
asking him. Is
Okay,
this,
yeah.
is this what would be appropriate if you're saying that's such a serious question for the whole community?
Okay, and so for the folks who were hoping that we would vote on this tonight, I would have to ask your patience to wait a little bit longer till we have a little more clarification on exactly what we can or cannot vote on and what our role is. And, so we'll move forward. But, because it has such an effect, a long-range effect on the town, the board, you could tell we really want to make sure we make the right decision for the best of the town in the long run. So, all right, so if we move on, we have a block party approval road for Chatham
We
Road.
approve the block party for Chatham Road for September 10th with a rain date of September 17th.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Bill. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. And now the gas leak legislation, which Marie brought up last week, is going before this is a Senate bill here, filed on 1/19/17, number 1845. And this is an act relative to protecting consumers of gas and electricity from paying for leaked and unaccounted for gas. And there's a number of co-signers on this, and I believe that our own, I don't see his name. So, this is the Senate. All right, I don't see our senator's name. Okay, Marie, did you want to comment on this?
Well, I think, I was reading about other legislation that other towns have supported. The Select Board in Framingham said this was important initiative, so I started to read about it, and I said, wow, this is important, because there's a lot of gas leaks in Massachusetts. We have a really high percentage of leaking old pipes, and there's been bills put in Boston to try to get the gas companies to address the problem. And all of those bills have been voted down based on a very strong lobby. And this bill came up, and I thought, this is very clever. It's saying, all right, we're not going to tell you to fix the pipes, but we're not going to pay for the leaked gas anymore. You're not going to put that burden on the consumers. And so I thought it was an important bill. And not only, I don't want to see gas leaking in the waste that's occurring, but I understand it's really important for our climate. Having all of this gas going into the atmosphere is not good for the climate and probably for our general health. And so I thought it would be very important for us to, put a letter of support on it. And that's why I just brought the legislation to the attention
All
of the
right.
board.
Sounds good. Any other comments or questions, Mark?
My only brief comment is I got this at 4:48 and I haven't read it. And I'm not prepared to vote. I think I'm in favor of it, but I haven't read it, so how can I vote on it tonight?
I think what I was going to suggest, Mark, was it's a pretty simple concept. It's a 7-page bill, and I did send it out at the end of the day. Actually, I talked to Michael Clark from Senator Lester's office. He helped point me in the right direction for the information. They support it. I know Representative Ash supports it. like I said, the concept is as simple as Marie just laid it out. And what I was gonna suggest was, you know, the board could, you know, write a letter or authorize either Tom or me to send a letter to the chairs of the Joint Committee on Telecom Utilities and Energy, and just say they support, and there's a companion House bill as well. Just say we support these two pieces of legislation. We support, you know, we support not billing residents for unaccounted gas that is a result of utility company negligence, or not negligence, but inattention, and we support any legislation such as whatever that you know puts the burden back on utility companies, or words to that effect. Or if you want to vote on a resolution supporting the thing more formally at the next meeting, you can do that too.
Mhm. And it does seem straightforward. I mean, gas is something that is metered, as you know, as it comes into your home, and so they know how much people are using in their homes and paying for, and then anything that's missing is really their problem, and they should be taken care of. So I'd agree, you know, that we should send a letter. I don't know if we can get a motion on that tonight, or if
Rob,
you
can I
want
just
to
ask a
wait.
point of information?
Yeah.
When's the legislature next in session? I mean, if we were to wait 2 weeks and take a more formal vote on this, would the world end?
No, I think this is
I
probably not
like I
even
said, I think
pulled
I'm
up.
for it, you know, and I'd
Okay.
much rather do it as a more formal, proactive kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if it's just gonna sit in somebody's inbox for the next 4 weeks, why are we, I'm serious.
The Framingham thing was from
Yeah.
2015, to let you know, this is not the first go. This thing has been posted before, so,
Yeah.
you know, I'm quite certain that if this did ever gain any traction, the utility companies would make their presence felt on Beacon Hill in a way that we simply cannot.
Okay, so if we could put this on our agenda for, Debbie, if you want to put this on the agenda for the next meeting, maybe we can have a vote then. And everyone can take a look at the bill. Does it seem all fair to everybody? Okay, great, thank you. The next is the Parks and Recreation Survey. And it talks about all
It's
the
Wolf Swamp Fields.
Wolf Swamp Fields.
No, I'm saying
Is-
the block party next.
That's the
We
whole,
did it. We already did it.
Did you do that?
right, a place where hopefully most of us spend a lot of, I know I spend a lot of time in Wolf Swamp Field. So,
Did you have something you wanted to add?
No.
do you want to make comments
Yeah.
on this first?
Sure. So, as you know, at town meeting, there was another citizen, actually it was not a citizen petition, it was a CPA article that was originated by a citizen who wanted to install irrigation at Wolf Swamp Fields. And at the time, I commented to the CBA, to the Community Preservation Commission, that, you know, I could support like doing the research to site a well, because that's just gonna be based on groundwater conditions. But to install an irrigation system now, without really figuring out, you know, master planning the whole park, because now that we know that Wolf Swamp Fields is indeed Article 97, then we might as well, you know, get on with making it a permanent asset for the community and improving the parking and traffic and everything else. So that's, working with Parks and Rec Director Barry Jarvis, we said we're going to come up with, you know, master plan the site so we can then come back. We'll work on the well siting process, but then we can come back next year, maybe ask for more money for parking or for irrigation or something, but build basically a plan where we have a series of steps that we can go for each year versus trying to get it all in 1 year to improve Wolf Swamp Fields, but have it based on a sensible plan. The first step in the planning process is to get input from the sports associations and other stakeholders and users of Wolf Swamp Fields. And so that's what the survey reflects. It's still open. I think it closes at the end of the month. But we had 400, more than 400 responses so far. And so I wanted to give the board a kind of snapshot of where things are. Excuse me.
That's
But the
good.
first part of that cough was going to be a yawn, and you made me yawn. So you can see that, you know,
Wolf Swamp, what improvements need to be made, parking, field conditions, traffic safety, athletic fields, the field layouts, the bathrooms, I mean, everything. And I think what this shows is soccer and lacrosse are growth sports, and baseball is holding steady, but softball is really, I'm sure if we did this 10 years ago, softball would fare a lot better than lacrosse. But you can see where the evolution of sports are. I think that this is good feedback from the community as we look at the fields overall. So that's basically letting you know what some of the community's attitudes are towards Wolf Swamp Fields, and let you know we've kind of hit a checkpoint in our master planning process. So this is just information.
Okay, any comments on the report?
Stephen, where can my sense from this was, you can almost tell by the field they wanted, what percentage of respondents came from which sports group, and I was wondering how we can get more people from the general public to respond. Is this on the town website?
I think it's your Parks and Rec's website. I think you can also link to it through their Facebook page. It's a SurveyMonkey survey,
Okay.
so you can link through it that way. It's funny, we talked about a synthetic field surface. That's dead down the middle. Basically 50-50 with a little bit of rounding. I think generally, this is something we talked about today or during the grounds discussion. Is it time to kind of revisit the synthetic turf? They've made changes to the fillings. I think they're moving away from crumb rubber, and they have a sand fill that they're looking at. Is this something a discussion we should resurrect for? I mean, obviously, I think we all look at the football stadium as the most logical location for a synthetic surface, which would then vastly expand our capacity for sports without adding square footage. The other thing is, we had 400 responses, and would you be willing to serve on a focus group for further discussions regarding this facility?
No.
Yes, 100. No, 319. Okay.
No.
Thanks for checking in. And all kidding aside, it is good feedback. I do appreciate the time that people took to fill this out. They also left a lot of comments. Some were more helpful than others, but it is good feedback to get. I do think it'll help us as we look at the field layout and figure out where we're going with Wolf Swamp, to guide our direction.
Well, it's interesting that there's very little mention about adult sports. I mean, I know that there's an over 50 soccer league that plays, and once in a while I see some adult softball. But because we don't have any taverns who are supporting sports for young adults, I think that really influences things. I mean, because I think about areas where there's a lot of young adults, playing softball leagues or playing, different things, mostly softball, I think, but even football. Usually there's taverns or bars that support those teams, and because we don't have any tavern, we don't have anyone doing that. I mean, there's really not a lot of adults.
It's a lot of clubs. I mean, they're just not organized by the taverns. It's mostly clubs.
Yeah, but it's really not a prominent part of our,
No.
considering how many people we have in that age group.
Yeah.
You'd think there'd be a lot of folks playing softball.
It really is a sport that has really tailed off. I mean, they took 2 softball fields and turned them into flex fields. That was a town meeting thing a few years back, and
Yeah.
because they just could not get enough flex. When I say flex field, things that could be used for soccer or lacrosse or field hockey,
Yeah.
and you can't have too much of that.
Well, people are too busy making money. I guess that's it.
Yep.
To be running around swinging a bat.
Yep.
All right, so that's, any other comments on this?
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought the last survey question was kind of interesting. Would you be willing to serve on a focus task force? No.
Yeah, when you were talking to Marie about that, I was making the same comment. I was like, thanks for checking in with us. But no, but I was being snarky, shockingly. But I did reiterate. I mean, I'm glad 400 people is a pretty good amount of feedback.
76% said, no way, Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're done with our new business, and any subcommittee reports?
Actually, yes, I didn't know I was going to have one, but was this, Debbie, you dropped this off? Was that it?
Yes,
About
I
the
just
membership
trying
of
to
the
straighten
Energy
out my
Task
side.
Force. And
Okay.
we have a slight problem in that, well, the school committee hasn't given us any members yet. We're supposed to have 2 members. According to the composition, we had planning board contributing somebody or appointing somebody. They're not doing that either. But someone from conservation really wants to be on the board. And I don't know if I need to bring this up and we have to re-vote the composition of the task force. So instead of planning board, have a member of conservation? Does anyone care about it? No one cares. Okay. All right, so I'll just make that change since I see no major objection. Okay. So I don't have to take a survey, and I'll suggest that member contact the Conservation Board to come forward. And so
Okay.
we'll have an official appointment that way. And no other reports at this point in time on subcommittees.
Okay, yeah,
If
because
you were gonna, but the composition that was adopted by the select board says a member of the planning board, right?
Yes, and that's,
So to do this the right way, and I shouldn't even say this out loud, but to do this the right way, you'd go to the planning board and say, would you mind delegating your membership or assigning your membership spot to this person who's on the Conservation Commission?
well, I asked them, but I spoke to the planning board, said, do you guys want to appoint anyone? There was silence in the room, so I don't
I
think
can
there'll be a problem.
certainly-
Ask and tell them, like you said.
Well, I can, next time I see the planning board, I will put it on their radar screen. Or change, you took a vote on a specific composition, change the composition, but don't, we run into problems like this, because then boards turn over, or, things happen, and be like, wow, how's this person on here? They're not even on the, they don't fit a slot.
Well,
that
that's
we
what I was
created.
saying, I would have to change planning to conservation, or I could just add conservation and put another spot on there. Because it's not as if people are knocking on the doors to come in. So do people prefer I just add conservation?
I would say, yeah, my opinion, I think.
We'll put it on the next agenda
Yeah.
then, right?
We can do a quick
Put it on the
motion.
agenda?
Well, it
Okay.
was on the agenda. Do you want a motion
Well,
on
it's,
it?
no, it's on, as a
on
subcommittee
sub-
report.
Oh,
Subcommittee.
well, it's still
That's a-
subcommittee.
It's subcommittee,
Oh,
so.
yeah, well, we'll give it, we'll let it sleep for a week.
Leslie,
So we'll let it
so
say
if
a
I'm not
couple
here in
weeks
2
and-
weeks, someone will put the motion on the floor.
Okay.
That's, okay.
Get
So
that, Deb?
I'll ask Deb House to please put that on the agenda, and we'll see if we can squeeze another person on that committee.
Yes.
I did talk, there was a couple of folks, I saw Marty O'Shea and Karen from the school board, and they're talking about getting a person. I don't know.
They have 2 spots.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you
So-
can remind them they have 2 spots we're waiting
yeah.
to fill.
I know they were plugging people into committees, the new members, so. But, all right, any other subcommittee reports? Then we will move on to adjournment. I know that we had correspondence from Richard Foster regarding winter averaging information that we should all.
I just
have gotten.
kind of updated that thing and sent it
Updated
out.
your-
I had a wrong figure.
Tom, I should have done some
Yeah.
of my town manager's report.
Yeah.
We did have a meeting with our consultant, Dave Prickett, on this matter, and he is reviewing a lot of the information and data, and we are working towards a recommendation. But we did have that session with him
Yeah, okay.
to move this forward.
All right, so we'll, and then as Dave Pickett, the consultant, gets things together, then we will put it back on the agenda and see if we can get closer to a vote or a policy. Okay, so we are going to adjourn if we get a motion and then go into executive session, not to return to an open meeting again. There's nothing on that that would bring us back.
For the purpose of?
Oh, for the purpose of approval of the minutes from the August 7th and litigation at the Pride gas station. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, second? Okay, all those in favor? Roll call.
Roll call.
Tom,
Yes?
Mark,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Marie,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
All right. So that's our meeting for tonight. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, contact the town manager. No, thank you very much. Good night.
What's up?
Last time, the lights were-
Because the building was in.